Chapter 8. Why would a social worker be calling on you? Enzo inquired with a frown. I foster Brody and Shona in a kinship agreement because we're related by blood. Obviously, there's occasional checks to ensure I'm taking proper care of them, Sky pointed out absently as she helped her sister gather up her coat and bag and saw her to the front door. When Sky emerged from her sister's hug and closed the front door again, Enzo was still frowning at her. I thought you had adopted them? That's the ultimate goal, and I've applied to adopt them. But currently, I'm fostering my little brother and sister under the supervision of the social services, Sky explained ruefully. Worst case scenario, if the authorities are not satisfied by how I'm caring for them, I could lose them. Lose them? Enzo repeated in evident disbelief. Yes, my siblings could be taken from me and placed elsewhere with strangers, even put up for adoption. Pale and taut at even voicing that frightening possibility, Sky swallowed the sudden thickness in her throat and found her voice again. So, naturally, I'm worried when I find out that Richie directed the social worker here, because what else may he have said or insinuated? And I'm already in the wrong for not having immediately contacted the authorities to inform them of our change of address. I intended to, but I hung back because I didn't know what best to say about us living here. Enzo paced the hall floor, swinging back to shoot her a troubled glance. I didn't fully understand your situation. You should have filled me in on these facts sooner. And what difference would that have made? I'll have to admit what happened with Richie. Sky sighed with compressed lips. Honesty is always the best policy. Sky went through to the kitchen and began to empty the dishwasher. The table and the counters and even the sink were full of dirty dishes. Alana was great with their siblings, but not so keen on cleaning up. Sky smiled. She cut her sister a lot of slack on that score, because she was aware that Alana dealt daily with some rich, horrendously entitled and arrogant guests in her job at the hotel, and was often treated badly in her role. Regrettably, that long and frustrating phone conversation told Enzo nothing he wanted to hear. His belief that he could magically sort out Sky's situation died an immediate death when he was very politely informed that his reputation as a notorious playboy would only exacerbate her problems. You could only help her by marrying her. His lawyer chuckled, clearly considering that possibility so far-fetched as to be hilarious. Officials involved in care and custody cases look for stable relationships and financial security as a baseline. I'm not thinking of marriage, Enzo asserted immediately, while his agile intellect pounced on the concept and played with it, turning it round until he could come up with a more acceptable solution. The advantages of such a move piled up even quicker in his brain. Brody was in the bath, and Sky was toweling dry Shona's hair when Enzo strolled into the bathroom. He had already changed out of his suit into faded jeans and a dark shirt. He rolled up his sleeves, already experienced enough in the bed and bath routine to know that Brody would get him wet. I thought you were working. Were we making too much noise? It only gets noisy when I'm here, Enzo reminded her without embarrassment. Enzo, Brody proclaimed with a beaming smile and an attitude of deep satisfaction. No splashing, Enzo, Sky warned her little brother without much hope, because Enzo was as much a fan of splashing games as the toddler. No splash, Brody promised, obediently. We'll take them to the zoo on Saturday, Enzo told her cheerfully. It's a very long drive. We'll go by helicopter then. Sky heaved a sigh at that careless suggestion, but said nothing, striving not to criticize or seem ungrateful for the lifestyle that Enzo enjoyed. For now, they were together, she reasoned, and the children were young enough that they would not remember much about him in a few months' time. She wondered ruefully if she would be able to say the same thing on her own behalf, and prayed for a short memory. Right at that moment, though, even glancing at Enzo's bronzed profile, as he grinned wickedly and capsized one of Brody's plastic boats, she felt as though she were riding hell for leather for a terribly steep fall. Enzo lit her up like a firework just by being in the same room. Once the children were fed and in bed, Sky set up the dining room for dinner. She had prepared a casserole for their evening meal, striving to behave as though nothing had changed between her and Enzo, when in truth, everything had changed, and she was trying to make little adjustments and avoid making a fuss. A fuss? Like asking him where they were going as a couple, when obviously they weren't going anywhere, and Enzo's fast-approaching departure would conclude whatever they did have. In short, she was trying to be sensible, not being the woman who hoped against hope for some fairy tale ending to suddenly pop up in front of her. I've had an idea, Enzo announced over the meal. Sky pushed her plate away and endeavored to smother the yawn creeping up on her. Sometimes Enzo's boundless energy was a challenge for her. He strode full tilt into every new day and attacked it like an obstacle course. He didn't slow down as the day progressed. He didn't seem to suffer from her insecurities, and if he had worries, he either rose above them or solved them. And even more to the point, The previous night spent in his arms had exhausted her right down to the marrow of her bones. "You look tired," Enzo remarked, ebony brows pleading as he scanned the faint purple shadows below her beautiful eyes and the downward curve of her lip. "I was thinking of an early night." Without the usual connotations, she added in haste as Enzo's dark, glittering gaze literally smoldered. Enzo laughed with considerable amusement. "As long as you're in my bed." "Actually, I was thinking—" "My bed," Enzo incised without hesitation. "We don't sleep apart. When I'm back at work, I won't see much of you otherwise, and we need to make the most of the time we have." Disconcerted by that speech and the assurance with which he spoke, Sky felt her cheeks burn even while her heart turned over at the news that he wanted to spend more time with her. "You said that you'd had an idea?" "I'm not sure you're ready to hear it yet. When you explained that you were under supervision with the social services, I realized that I had put you in a rather dodgy position. If you were simply working for me, it might be all right. But we're having an affair, and some people would view that as a matter of concern. Particularly when I'm said to have a questionable reputation with women," he framed between compressed lips. At last he had put a label on what they shared. An affair? It sounded rather racier than Sky felt herself to be, but she couldn't think of any other word to cover their new togetherness. Color fluctuating, she went off to fetch the coffee. He had seen the same writing on the wall that she had foreseen. Her standing in his life was far from ideal. She was no longer merely a live-in housekeeper, not since they had become much more personally involved. She would look like a foolish, undisciplined woman who had tumbled carelessly out of one disastrous relationship with a man into another that could prove almost as damaging from her siblings' point of view. Enzo accepted his coffee. "No comment?" Sky compressed her lips. "What you said was true, and the children are already attached to you, which is not a good idea when you're leaving. I have a solution to all of it, and I would be happy to make the sacrifice." "Sacrifice?" Sky interrupted in dismay. "What on earth are you talking about? You're so good at being a fake girlfriend. I think you would be a blast as a fake wife." Lilac eyes as wide as they would open stared back at him in disbelief. "Enzo, are you crazy? I want you to consider the idea. I've become fond of the children, and I would pretty much do anything to ensure that you get to keep them with you," Enzo admitted. "I consulted my British lawyer for advices." "I bet he didn't tell you to marry your penniless housekeeper to help her," Sky exclaimed, wreathed in mortification as she understood the meaning of that word sacrifice, as pertaining to her and the children. "I'm completely free to marry anyone I want, and if I can put you in a better position to adopt your siblings, I'm willing to do it." "Well, thank you very much, but I'm not willing to accept you as a sacrifice." Sky shot back at him with burning cheeks, thrusting back the dining chair to stand up. "We have to talk about this." "No, we don't. We definitely don't." "Sky?" Enzo swore under his breath as he watched her pile up dishes to clear the table. "Sit down and have your coffee." She raised a brow. "Is that an order, sir?" Enzo dealt her a quelling appraisal. "It is. But let's take the coffee across the hall and be a little more relaxed." "I can't be relaxed when you're talking about marrying me purely to do the kids and me a favor," she argued. Ignoring that statement, Enzo swept up the coffee and strode across the hall into the sitting room, where she had already lit the corner lamps. He proceeded to seek the controls that would ignite the gas fire, because the room was chilly, and, while he was still searching, Sky nudged him gently out of the way and took care of it. "I was planning to start putting up the Christmas decorations tomorrow." "Is that all right with you?" she asked brightly, faking it as best she could, keen to change the subject when what he had suggested was sheer insanity. "You'll have to buy it all new for this place." Enzo pulled out a credit card and extended it to her as she sank down on the edge of a plush sectional unit. She grasped it with reluctant fingers. "And stop trying to change the subject." "But what you said about marriage was ridiculous," Sky told him tautly. "You can't say stuff like that." "Why not?" Enzo sent her a questioning look, refusing to be either uncomfortable or knocked off topic. "I'm prepared to deliver on my suggestion. Right now, you need me." Sky flipped upright again in frustration and embarrassment. "I don't need you." "No?" Enzo stalked closer, dark eyes as hot and golden as the heart of a fire. "You need me. Without realizing what I was doing, I placed you in a difficult position here, and then I exacerbated the situation by having sex with you. I wasn't aware that you were in a situation with the children that entailed official scrutiny, but I am conscious that my reputation won't do you any favors. Why shouldn't I choose the one option that could sort this mess out? Well, for a start, I can sort out my own problems. You talking nonsense about us getting married is sheer folly." Black lashed eyes of gold shimmered. I'm a very good catch, Enzo quipped with an infuriating grin. Lean, dark features illuminated by his unholy amusement. Well worth the investment of time required, and a lot of women would be willing to take the risk on me. I like kids and animals, but most of all, I appreciate very small, slightly built women with curly hair. Enzo. Sky groaned, her face heating as she recognized herself in that description. Stop it. We would only have to stay married until the children are safely and legally yours by adoption. Then we would both take our freedom back, and I would ensure that when we separated you, at least, had a decent home for you and your siblings. Once I was gone, you would be able to make a completely fresh start, Enzo pointed out convincingly. Once I was gone. That single phrase reverberated inside Sky like a death knell and ran chills down her spine, making her skin break out in goosebumps. It's a very generous offer, only not quite the offer that could have thrilled rather than chilled, she recognized guiltily. He meant fake, indeed, could only have faced the idea of a marriage that would be a fake. It wouldn't be real, but she would know that from the start. She would also know that it would hurt like hell when she was no longer flavor of the month, and he walked away. Her heart sank. It's the practical solution to all your worries, and it allows us to continue our current arrangement for as long as we choose. Sky emitted a second groan. Enzo, you wouldn't even be with me if you were living your normal playboy life, she protested. You're only with me now because there isn't much choice in this locality, and I'm convenient. Enzo reached down to grasp her hand and tugged her upright. Madre di Dio, what did that cowardly little rat do to your self-esteem? He demanded fiercely. Do you truly believe that I suffer from a lack of choice with women? Or that I would simply settle for convenient? No, I was trying to explain. I could have called any number of women that I know and invited them to keep me company here. But I met you. I wanted you. You in particular, you especially, he emphasized in lethal continuance. Absolutely no other woman would have done or could have taken your place. His stunning eyes were smoldering gold, luxuriant black lashes low over his intense gaze, his conviction undeniable. Her tummy flipped, her breath catching in her throat, every inch of her pulled taut with tension. I shouldn't have said that, she mumbled, embarrassed now. Particularly when it wasn't the truth, Enzo cut in. One lean hand traveling from her taut shoulder, through the soft, silky fluff of her curls, and down to the taut line of her spine. You and I are together. In a relationship? She stressed in astonishment. We've always been in a relationship, Enzo countered with unblemished cool, convinced that it was safe to use that word when he was not emotionally invested in it. It was never a question of just one night. The moment I had you, I wanted you again, and it's still that way. Does that bother you? She whispered, more seriously this time. If you wanted your own bed, it would, he confided huskily. As he eased her slight body up against his, and he shifted lithely against her, she felt the hard, unashamed promise of his arousal, and she trembled, filled to overflowing with sensual awareness. So, you're prepared to ask me to marry you on the basis of sex. It's not that basic. Do we really need to go into detail about this attraction? Sky stared up at him in silence, because that same attraction, that crazy explosive chemical reaction, was tearing her in two. He was talking about marriage, and she wasn't stupid. She was intelligent enough to appreciate that a wealthy husband would be an advantage in official terms, while a legendary playboy would be a dangerous drawback as a lover, their relationship viewed as insecure and temporary. But Enzo could still offer her and the children a safe future where she could not. As yet, she had neither a permanent home nor reliable employment to offer in her own favor. And more than anything, she yearned for the security of knowing that the young brother and sister she loved to distraction would remain in her care. The fear of losing custody of Brody and Shona haunted her and made her seriously regret the choice she had made when she had agreed to move in with Richie. Of course, Richie had talked of marriage as well. But there had been no further mention of it once he'd had her within his power. At least, Enzo was truthful about what he was offering and what he wanted from such an arrangement. A wife who was a wife only on paper. A wife who would agree to a divorce the minute he got bored. He wasn't pretending to love her. He wasn't acting as though he wanted her by his side forever. And wasn't there something to be said about that honesty, wounding as it was? With Enzo, she would know where she stood from the outset, what she could expect from him, as well as the terrible truth that a parting was inevitable. The status of a wife was, even so, a lot stronger and safer than that of a casual lover. I'll think about it. Have you ever been in love? She asked weakly. Enzo grimaced. Once was enough. I was young and stupid. I'm not young and stupid anymore. Who was she? I don't talk about that. It was years ago. I would still like to know, she admitted, avoiding his gaze. Then you are doomed to disappointment. Did you think of marrying her? Yes, but soon after that I discovered that she had been lying to me and cheating on me. I had a lucky escape. Are you thinking about marrying me? Enzo murmured huskily, the dark timbre of his deep voice making an intimate part of her clench tight with awareness. I believe all your worries would be over if you were with me. Of course I'm thinking about it, Sky muttered ruefully. You're gorgeous and sexy and incredible in bed, and I found you very reliable, in spite of your reputation. Enzo stretched out a hand and switched off the fire. Leave the cleaning up for the morning. Incredible? He husked. Sky went red as fire. You know you are. Enzo closed long fingers around hers to lead her upstairs. Sky pulled free long enough to run around and douse the lights that had been left on. You're so responsible, Enzo told her appreciatively, as she joined him on the landing where he awaited her. And you don't think about stuff like that because you've never had to worry about bills, she guessed, and then sealed her mouth closed again because sniping at him about his privileged status in life was pointless. He gathered her into his arms and ravished her parted lips with feverish hunger and then pulled back. Sorry, early night without interference. I forgot. Sky laughed. Enzo, you chased my early night right out of my head when you mentioned your idea. You are thinking about my suggestion, aren't you? Of course I am. But even more, she was wondering about the identity of the woman he had once thought of marrying, when he deemed himself to be young and stupid, and whether that romance had turned him off love and commitment forever. Evidently, the episode still rankled enough that even now, he didn't want to talk about it. His room had become their room, although her clothes were still across the corridor in her original room, and she wouldn't be moving them anytime soon, because the wardrobes in Enzo's room were packed to the gills with fancy suits and shirts. Having fetched her cleansing stuff, she removed her makeup while Enzo watched her from the doorway. I never saw a woman without makeup until I met you, he confided. And I shouldn't have let you sneak up on me. Sky pushed him out of the doorway and closed the door in his face while she cleaned her teeth. I checked on the kids, he told her when she reappeared and jumped into bed. Someday you'll make a great father, she whispered as he undressed, although her tummy turned over when she reflected that if she did marry him, she would not be the wife he chose to have a family with. Their marriage would only be temporary. She tried to close her eyes, but the temptation of watching Enzo strip was too great and too strong. Lean, flexing muscles sheathed in golden skin began to emerge, and her mouth ran dry, and her breathing became audible. I feel objectified, Enzo lamented with dancing, dark golden eyes. But I love feeling your eyes on me. When are you planning to rip off your clothes for my benefit? That would be... Never, Sky warned him. Enzo strolled lazily out of the bathroom. Never say never around me. Are you thinking about it yet? Has a guy ever received a less enthusiastic response to a marriage proposal? Has ever a woman been told that the prospective bridegroom would be sacrificing himself? Enzo vaulted into bed beside her. That wasn't diplomatic. It wouldn't be a sacrifice. I have never wanted any woman the way I want you. No matter where you are, what you're doing, what you're wearing. You're just oversexed, Sky told him, snuggling up to him, one small hand smoothing down over his abs. I'm not going to lay a finger on you tonight, he swore, heavy-lidded dark eyes scanning her face. You're tired. Not that tired, Sky teased, allowing that admiring hand to travel south, listening to his groan of startled pleasure with deep satisfaction. Possibly, I'm off limits until you decide on the proposal. We both know I'm going to say yes because you will keep on and on and on about it until I do. Sky sighed. Now you're talking my language, Piccolo mio. Enzo turned over and pulled her close, running his hands down over her slender back and pulling her slight body over his. And we can celebrate. Sacrifices don't celebrate unless they're martyrs. Undeterred, he laughed and extracted a long, drugging kiss. A wave of intoxicated happiness washed over Sky. She had said yes to the insanity. But from her point of view, it would be a sensible move as the authorities would much prefer a couple to adopt the children. She would be fine, she told herself urgently. She would live in the moment and look neither forward nor back. Life was too short for regrets and far too colorless without Enzo. An hour later, just as she was drifting on the edge of sleep, Enzo sprang out of bed, pulled on a pair of jeans and stabbed a number into his phone. Who on earth are you calling this late? She mumbled, watching the unbuttoned jeans slide down to his hip bones, leaving her to look at a flat, hard stomach, traversed by a dark furrow of hair. Chiara, a friend of mine, and it's not too late an hour for a party girl and the best wedding planner in Italy, he explained, switching to liquid Italian and settling into a very long and animated conversation, while Sky slowly wakened, galvanized into the act by those magic words, wedding planner. Wedding planner? She queried as he set his phone aside with an air of satisfaction. Yes, she'll fly over here tomorrow. We're thinking the Maldives. We could do with a bit of sunshine. The Maldives? She exclaimed. It's the right time of year, and then we'll be home here for Christmas. Enzo, I would need permission from the authorities to take the children out of the country. Then get it organized. Set up a meeting for us, whatever. Enzo spread an eloquent brown hand to underscore his urgency. We have to get this show on the road, and there's some stuff I can't do for you. I'll ring my grandparents and tell them what's happening at breakfast time. You should put Alana on alert. I assume you want her at the wedding? And we ought to consider a nanny for the occasion as well. Now fully awake as that detailed list of instructions penetrated, Sky sat up in bed and stared back at him, her eyes huge. He was overflowing with raw energy, dark eyes glittering, vitality and impatience splintering from every inch of his long, lean body. It's 1 a.m, Enzo. What on earth are you planning to tell your grandparents about us? The truth, only the truth. It wouldn't be fair to let them believe that we were a real forever couple. But that won't stop them dreaming the dream and hoping we fall for each other regardless of what I've said. Enzo frowned. They'll be disappointed, but there's not much I can do about that. Sky tried and failed to come up with a conversational response. He had silenced her. We could get married here, she pointed out weakly. Not very festive. It's dull and damp and wet. I like sunshine. Sky nodded slowly. I'll contact our caseworker when the office opens. My legal team will take care of any legalities involved. So, it seems we are definitely getting married, she commented shakily. And all you need to worry about is what you wear, Enzo asserted with satisfaction. He would make her happy, he reasoned. He would stay married to her until she had her life and her future plans sorted out. He reckoned that would take at least a year to achieve. A year was no time at all. It would be a practical arrangement that met both their needs. And he needed her. He needed her very much at present, although he was certain that driving need to be with her would fade as time moved on.